Alright, so we're back with a little OBS truck. Had an unfortunate turn of events on this garbage. We got it back together, tried to crank it and run it and everything. And when he brought the truck on the trailer, we're trying to crank it and sounded like the starter wasn't turning it fast enough, and it just wasn't turning over. It didn't have enough RPM to fire off. So, didn't really think about it. Tried to turn the engine over by hand, and number 6 injector was hung open. So it was, I could feel it pushing against me. So I was like, well, probably it just has fuel in the cylinder, put the new engine in it, get going, should be good to go. Well, get the new engine in, flowed through the injectors. Number 6 was hung open, but I was able to flow through it both ways, and then it was working fine. There was 2 on this side that just were not sealing, so I recommended ordering a new set of injectors. The Holley 100-pound injectors is what I run, and right now they're $359 or something like that. So not a bad deal for 8 injectors, whereas the ones he had, these things right here, were $100 a piece. And the problem with doing that is he bought 2 injectors, then it's not a match set anymore. You don't know if it flows the same as the other ones, and it's just, I understand, trying to save money and whatnot, but that's one place you don't save money on. There are certain things that you just spend the money on. You buy a good torque converter, a good set of injectors, decent turbo, a good fuel pump, a good fuel system, stuff like that, is where you want to spend your money, because otherwise it's just going to be problematic. So, and I'm not saying that the Holley 100-pound per hour injectors at $375 or with tax and everything is, it's not expensive, it's not cheap. The problem is data. And that's what Michael was telling him is, with these FICs, they send you a thumb drive that has all the data for HB tuners, which is what this is on the Holley stuff. The Holley 100-pound per hour injectors, there's a drop down and you select it. But on stock ECU stuff, having the data is very important to getting it to run right. So again, I scour the internets, and plural, and try to find data and what other people are doing, and usually they run okay for me, but Michael, being as experienced as he is, he's able to make them run well enough, despite not having the exact correct data, which, all my stuff, all the stuff I've taken him, he's been able to make run fine. He's never said anything. And one of the trucks actually had a set of snake eater injectors, which I know they get a bad rap all the time, but the running ability and drivability and all were fine. Now I will say the Caprice with those 2 10-pound per hour injectors is not as smooth and crisp as the smaller injectors. So I'm today I just got the Caprice out of here off the lift. I had to add an extra quart of fluid to it. I had to hook up the wideband because Michael wanted to look at the wideband while we do the fuel tuning and transmission tuning on it today. And then it's been getting in the what I call the pinwheel of death, where it starts swinging up and down, and then you're starting to 2-foot it and hoping it doesn't shut off on you. So anyway, hopefully we'll get all that squared away this afternoon when I go down there, and then talk about what we're going to do with this junk. But anyway, back to the injectors. So flowed them, he bought 2, we got it back together, and then I got to looking, and apparently there's a 9-tooth starter and an 11-tooth starter. Well, the starter I had was 11-tooth. The one that he had got was 11 tooth, but I had no idea what the one that was on it was, that was actually starting and running the truck. So I looked on Rock Auto, and again, the 9 tooth typically comes on the 5.3 from what Rock Auto says, and then the 11 tooth is on the 6.0s. Well, since this has an 80 behind it, it has the flat flex plate with the crank spacer, and that's a 6.0 flex plate. So I don't know why the 11 tooth didn't work, but when we got a 9 tooth and put it on there, it turned over no problems and everything was right with the world until number 6 hung open again, and it been a rod, so it's already junk. We didn't even get to drive it or anything. It's already I'm gonna have to pull it out, and then, well, whatever he decides to do. I've got that aluminum 5.3 back there that I think he might buy from me, and I'll take this camshaft and just put that cam in there, because I think the springs are already correct on that engine. And then, I'll pull this out, put the aluminum motor in there. It'll probably run better. I think it's got a little more compression than this engine, because it's a LC9 or whatever it is. But anyway, when that injector was messing up, I pulled it out. And I hate these rails, by the way. I hate this intake, and I hate these rails. I hate studs for these intakes. This intake's, it's not, for what we're trying to do with a street truck, this is not what needs to be on here. These fuel rails are the biggest pain in having to get that little aluminum spacer in between there. And if you drop it, you can't pick it up with a magnet. So, I waited until he got the 2 injectors to put them on the bench before I put it in the truck, because I didn't want to deal with that crap, and then I ended up having to deal with that crap. So at the end of the day, he still ended up buying the Holley injectors, and it cranks up and runs, and has, Uncle Rodney is talking to us. But it's an unfortunate turn of events, and that's one of the things about this stuff, is that's just how it is sometimes, unfortunately. And it's been the last few months of that, unfortunately. So it's been hectic and rough around here, with stuff going sideways and not working out, and sometimes it's like that. We just gotta keep pushing through, and hopefully one day it'll come together and work out for us. But that's where we're at on this thing. Something else I learned. Oh, I got a truck out here. It's a 03 that it's a 03 Z71. Been sitting a while, and it was skipping. They put a fuel pump in it, and it was skipping, whatever. So again, back to injectors. I checked everything over, and I was like, it's got to be the back 2 injectors. So I pulled the fuel rails, which is so much easier than this garbage. Got the fuel rails off. Sure enough, the back 2 injectors were just like completely crudded up, and it looked like rust. It was really bad. So I was like, okay, there's my problem. So take another set off of my 17 intakes over here under the bench, flow through, all of them, make sure they're good. Put a new fuel filter in the truck. And I tried to use a different fuel rail. It looked the same, had the supply and return on it, but then when I went to put it on the intake and bolt it down with the two 8mm bolts that hold the fuel rail down on the intake, and it was somehow that fuel rail raised it up higher, so the base of the injectors wouldn't go in the intake. So I've never encountered that before. So I ended up having to use his fuel rail, and now it's, now that I've got it cleaned up and running again, there wasn't much fuel in the tank, but now it's already messed up the injectors I put in it. So I got to pull those out and put another set of injectors in it to get it running right. That's just, when these things sit, all that fuel sitting in those rails just really wreaks havoc on these injectors. And then you add E85, we won't go there, but Anyway, so that was two things that I learned this week about LSs that I have never encountered before, was the 9.2 starter, and then that fuel rail did not fit that truck intake. And it came off of a 3-bolt truck intake, so I have no idea what the difference is. But anyway, that's two things I learned this week about the LSs that I had no prior knowledge to. But, you know, if you put the starters side by side, I mean, you can't tell the difference between the 9 and 11, and you know, unless you count. Well, here's one right here. This is 11 tooth, so obviously it's a larger diameter. Devin Vanderhoof would have a fit if he saw these lighters used for heat shrink. I think about that every time I'm heating up some heat shrink with a lighter. Anyway, all right, so that's it for now. Hopefully, I have an update on the Caprice or something. Hopefully it doesn't blow up when Michael's driving it today either. So